Monetary Policy Committee, before announcing the rate reduction, etc., did very specifically mention that at this particular juncture, growth is a matter of highest priority. And I think this is something which the financial sector representatives, the banks and the leaders from the business community and everyone who is involved in policy making and all regulators are concerned with. Growth today is a matter of highest priority.
Good evening. You just heard that gentleman speak. He is Shaktikanta Das, the current governor of the Reserve Bank of India, and he needs no introduction. Now take a look at what the former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan had to say. He said, and I quote, "The economic slowdown is very worrisome. Government needs to fix the problems in the non-bank financial sectors. We need a new set of reforms to energize the private sector to invest." You cannot have bigger voices express their concern on the economy. The message is clear. The slowdown is real. The government too has taken note and is at work, as we discussed, to revive the economy. Joining me tonight are experts who will together write a prescription for our ailing economy. Let's quickly go across to them. Joining me tonight are Professor Aman Agarwal. He is the director of the Indian Institute of Finance. Mohan Guruswamy, a senior economist and chairman at the Center for Policy Alternatives in New Delhi. Anila Singh also joins me. She's a spokesperson with the BJP. Also on the panel is Sunil Alagh. He's a founder with SKA Advisors. We'll go across first to Mohan Guruswamy. Mohan Guruswamy, we've seen two RBI governors, one ex-RBI governor, one current RBI governor, both speak out. Both are saying that growth is a concern. The ex-RBI governor, Raghuram Rajan, also said that we need something drastic to ensure that investment revives once again. Would you say that is the biggest problem facing the economy tonight?
Absolutely. The only problem, the biggest problem is investment. There is no investment taking place. And after having said that, I will say this, that in a country like ours, in an economy like ours, investment is led by the state. State-led investment has slowed down to a dribble, to a trickle. And you need to get that going again. The government has to find the money, has to think of creative ways of making funds available. I've been talking of a national investment fund administered by independent people, where the government will get, take foreign debt and, also run down some of the reserves we've got and create a fund of, maybe $50 billion to start investing in critical parts of the economy to jumpstart the economy again. But we need something out of the box now. This little tax rate of, 10% and 10 points and 20 points is not going to help now. The mood has to be revived with something big. Corporate profits are very low. They've been lowest in 19 months. It's down to 2.7%. And you're not going to have money in corporate civil. And besides, the mood is not there. You've got to be in a good mood to invest.
Right, let's go to Sunil Alagh here. Sunil Alagh, you've been with the corporate sector. Would you agree that the corporate sector right now is in no mood to invest and you need some out-of-the-box thinking?
Yeah, I would agree with Mohan in saying that, look, the perception is that nobody is going to invest, and I've said that earlier, and I'm going to repeat myself in saying that, look, the whole budget and the way the government has looked at it is that they've become industry-driven. For me, consumption-driven is what is the most important thing. Unless people don't spend, and that's the oil in the machine that comes in. And where is then then the demand goes up, then the investment comes in, then jobs are created and everybody gets going. The virtuous cycle starts like that. So far, they've put no money in the hands of the consumer. So the middle income group is not spending, the rural income group is not spending. How will industry ever invest? If you keep on giving money only to banks and you keep on trying to do industry driven, they are not going to come out on their own. the mood will change when people start spending. This is worldwide. I mean, it's known. And I've also said today, look, when the governor was talking today, let's not take his thing out of context. At least Shaktikanta Das was quite clear that, look, the economy has slowed down. But then the rest of his speech was that if you carry on this gloom and doom policy and everybody thinks we are going to get into depression, then we are going to get into a recession. So the problem of us getting into recession is more the fear of recession itself. And that is what one has to avoid. Let look, we have to get together, let the government start spending some money, yes. Their obsession with fiscal deficit, the governments that we got to keep it down, and the RBI governor's macro analysis on inflation. Look, I mean, I've always said that, look, up to 6% inflation in a developing economy is okay. And even if the fiscal deficit went up to 4.25%, no big deal. And that's where we are getting into that cycle, you know, like where everything that we are doing is leading us to some form of recession. The perception in the market is today, the SBI chairman also said that, look, he has something like, he mentioned 1 lakh crore of funds lying around. Nobody is coming up and taking it, mainly because the demand is not going up. So unless you start plowing money into the hands of consumers, either reducing tax or playing around with GST, it is not going to happen. You really need to take that kind of big step right now and get the mood right, get the perception changed. And he ended also by being very positive that, look, we have to do something to change the perception of the economy. Otherwise, it won't work.
Right. So, Aman Agarwal, we've had our experts give us 2 different scenarios here. Mohan Guruswamy in favor of doing something, coming out with some sort of out-of-the-box thinking so that investment is in a way kick-started by industry. On the other hand, by government and then by industry. On the other hand, we have Sunil Alagh saying that it should be consumption-led. You should give more money in the hands of people so that they spend more, which will create more demand, which will then prod industry to produce more. Where do you stand?
No, I think both of them have actually raised positive points in terms of what could be the ways out. And I think certainly they are some of those ways out. But the issue is not that you go about distributing largesse. And it's not a good idea to go about distributing largesse because it will not lead to investment. It has to be investment-based consumption, which has to be there, which needs to create jobs, which need to create growth orientation, which gives that boost to the market as well as people's livelihood. And that's what is important. So in my opinion, when you're giving tax breaks, it has to be job-linked tax breaks. So you go about giving, incentive. We have seen countries like Switzerland and others where they've actually implemented job-based tax structures where companies can come and ask that if I'm giving so many jobs, I should be given certain tax breaks. Similarly, the government needs to move itself from the level of the fiscal deficit where they have stuck on to keeping the international arena, because we are not a developed country. We are still an emerging economy, and large part of the country needs to function in. Yeah. We also see the fact that almost about 45 to 55% of government jobs vacancies have been not filled up in the last 3-4 years. They need to be immediately filled, because if you want effective governance, which the motto is of this government, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabke Saath, and with effective governance, how can you go about doing that effective governance if the machinery is not yet filled up? And that's very critical for the economy to go forward. I think they need to, and I'm happy at least lately, not only the governor of Reserve Bank, but even the Prime Minister a couple of days back came forth and said that we need to look at it. And when the Prime Minister is looking at it now, and the focus given by the Prime Minister in the last 1 week, we will certainly see the whole machinery, all ministries, all departments now churning up to actually creating facilities and frameworks to bring in that structure. So I am still very hopeful of the India growth story, because many of the important parameters like fiscal, reserves, the reserves which we have with RBI, whether we talk of the exchange rate, whether we talk of the growth factor worldwide, like Shaktikant Das also mentioned the fact that when you look at, there are heat waves coming from across the globe, we are still one of the fastest growing economies. So there are positive factors to the factor, and the fact that we have come to the right focus with the government coming in place, I think we will see. One important component, in my opinion, which Shaktikant Das has given in his speech today and yesterday, is the fact that the regulators have to be hand-holding. they have to take a step further and not, they should be watchdogs and not bloodhounds in a matter of fact, and they should keep regulatory framework in place but not to cripple the economy. We have seen large number of regulators in the last 2 years or so in specific, which have actually throttled, even RBI that as a matter of fact, when Urjit Patel and Viral was there, had actually throttled the whole system, which had actually crippled the whole banking framework, putting almost about 13 to 14 banks under the PCA, where they could not recruit, they could not expand, they could not lend, and do a lot of other activities. So in my opinion, Shaktikant Dance in the last 6, 7 months, 8 months has tried to influx, but the liquidity crunch is still a big problem. Despite the fact that banks are flushed with funds, the market is not picking up money because of this negative movement which has started taking place. But I think the government needs to now step in, create structures, and we should not land up with what US had landed up way back in 2008, 2009, when they had to actually go about doing an act. A bill had to be launched by Obama to actually bring about recovery, called a Recovery Act at that time, which had to actually flush in a huge chunk of money. I think we are still quite far away from that, and the right kind of focus at the right time has taken place, and I'm happy that the banks are responding to the governor and the RBI. In the past, we have seen that the credit relaxations have happened, but never has been transferred to the consumers. For the first time, we saw today State Bank of India come out and say that we'll be rending it with linking it to the repo rate, which is directly transferring. And I met and talked to a large number of bank managers. They were shocked to hear this particular fact, that their banks have still not taken an action, whereas SBI has already taken a call on it. So there is an impact which is taking place to revive the economy, revive the structure. But in my opinion, if the regulators do not make a call of hand holding, if they are stringent, they are going to be bloodhounds, I think we will cripple down the economy to its shackles. And that's where the government needs to focus on now, trying to provide that framework. The government has an open mind. It is looking at activities. It is looking at the stimulus packages which could be given,
And in
tax
fact,
incentives which could be developed. I think that is where the right focus is.
Right, and in fact, Aman Agarwal, we need to note over here, and it was on this very channel a week ago, I believe, that we had actually discussed the fact that the Prime Minister himself had to come out and ask banks to pass on the benefits of policy rate cuts to people. Of course, the SBI move comes after that, and one does hope, because generally when SBI comes and takes the first step, other banks do follow. Let's go across to Anila Singh here. Anila Singh, we know that the government is working to, revive the economy. Could you give us a sense of where the focus would be in as part of this revival?
Kavita, you are very well aware that lately, a finance minister of our country, she is interacting with several groups, and a whole machinery is trying to fix out the situation. There is absolutely no doubts about it, because figures never lie, that there has been a little slowdown in economy. But we must understand one thing, we are talking keeping in mind the performance of the first quarter of the year. This has been an election year, and we very well know when there is an election year, several machineries, they get involved, and there are several reasons which crop up for the slowdown as well. And if it divide our economy into macro and micro, macro economy or the micro economy, and both the sectors have got their own problems. But again, I was listening to two experienced, rather I'll say all the three experienced people talking about the economy from their own capacity, and I think all the three are absolutely correct. And government of India knows very well and understands very well that where the problem lies, and in the leadership of finance minister, we are working on it, and very soon, whether it is about the banks, and lately we know that what type of legacy this government had inherited. If we talk about the banks, many of the banks, they had given loans to the people considering name rather than understanding the credit or the the cash flow. So there had been many mistakes in the past earlier, and with that several steps had been taken by the present government to mend the corruption in the economy of our country. So getting together, and plus the election year. So we are seeing the economic scenario of the world as well. So the things had been slow, but the government is working on it, and very soon several steps will be taken so that the normalcy in the economic world of our country comes.
Right, Anila Singh, I don't know if blaming elections is fair, because generally what happens in election season is that money comes into the economy rather than goes out of it. Before the elections, of course, money is sucked out, but during elections, money is spent. So that should ideally benefit and not hamper the economy over here. But let's go across to Mohan Guruswamy. Mohan Guruswamy, you'd given us a number of solutions, and of course, I wanted to bring to your notice what Bibek Devroy had to say today. He has been quoted in a leading newspaper as saying that he would widen the deficit for capex, for capital expenses, but he would control revenue expenses. This is something very similar to what you've been saying, that the government should be spending more money, should be investing more money. Mohan Guruswamy, how will that help to revive the economy?
Obviously, great minds think alike. I'm just kidding. But that is your only solution. How do you get out of this bind? Like, you will get consumption after this investment. You can't have consumption and then investment. It's the other way around. So you got to put your money there on the ground, let people get to work, let people place orders for equipment, for raw material, for cement, for steel, whatever, and then let the economy start moving. And so unless you do that investment, you're not going to get anything moving. And investment has ground to a halt. It's been grinding to a halt from 2012. It's been downward trend. And you can't keep blaming the previous regime forever and ever. It reminds me of the 3 letters Stalin was supposed to have left behind for Khrushchev. He said, in the first crisis, blame it on the predecessor. Second crisis, blame it on the predecessor. Third crisis, write 3 letters. So I think, 2 letters are over now. So I think you've got to get up and act, or write your 3rd letter, or write 3 more letters. So, so don't blame it on the predecessor anymore. You had 6 years to act on NPAs. You didn't do a thing. You had 6 years to recapitalize the banks. You didn't do a thing. You had 6 years to cut down public wasteful expenditure. You didn't do a thing. You had 6 years to disinvest large parts of the wasteful PSUs. You didn't do it. Air India is still bleeding you. It bled 40,000 crores while this government has been in office. So, don't stop blaming Manmohan Singh now. Manmohan Singh he's just barely come back to Rajya Sabha. Leave him at that. Right now, you have to act. You haven't acted. So don't look at the past. Now look for the future. Don't look for excuses. That's what I tell the government.
Right. Mohan Guruswamy, well, the government seems to be acting, to be taking some action over here. Now, this is what we are hearing, that from our sources, Times Network learns that the government is in fact looking at the non-fiscal sector specific boost in the upcoming days. Now, we understand that relief measures for auto and real estate sectors being discussed at the highest level. The government is also looking at the impact of rolling back the FPI surcharge. Now, this is what we are hearing from our sources. But and let me bring in, I'm also joined by.
Won't help. Let me tell you something.
One second, Mohan Guruswamy. I'm also joined by my colleague from ET Now, who's got us this story. Ruchi joins me right now. Ruchi, can you tell us what is the government really considering over here? A sort of an action plan to kickstart the economy?
Over the last few days, we have seen how various sectors in the economy are reeling under a lot of pressure, and top leaders of India Inc. from A.M. Nayak to Deepak Parekh all have talked about how the government needs to take steps in a bid to pump prime the economy. We at ET Now are given to understand that over the next few days, the government is going to take various steps in a bid to bring in relief to various sectors. Any sort of fiscal measures are unlikely, which essentially means that the government is not going to give extra money in the economy. We are given to understand sector-specific relief measures for real estate and auto sector are likely. The auto sector has been suffering the worst ever sales in the last 2 decades. We are seeing how layoffs are happening across the auto sector. So we're given to understand that certain amount of regulatory clarity for the BS4 vehicles could be likely as a part of the measures by the government. The pros and cons of a stressed asset fund for real estate sector is also being discussed. Remember, the real estate sector is seeing huge inventory build up and is seeing how home buyers are stuck with by paying money to various builders, and they have still not received their flats. So these are the two main issues and two main areas that the government is likely to focus on. With regard to the equity markets, the capital markets, the big concern has been various budget announcements. And we're given to understand that some sort of a rollback on the tax on super rich FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, could also be rolled back, could also be discussed. These discussions are, of course, at the highest level between Finance Ministry and the Prime Minister's office, and we're given to understand that before the month ends, some basic measures are likely for the economy. How effective are they going to be is something that we still have to wait and watch, but looks like the economic slowdown has got the government worried.
Right. Ruchi, one more question. You spoke of the auto and the real estate sectors and how the government is looking at company-specific measures. Anything for the consumer here? Anything to get people to go out and buy homes or cars?
All I can say at this point of time is that once the sector revives, this is going to provide a relief to consumers as well. We have seen how home buyers have been stuck. They have paid the monies to various real estate developers, but they've still not received their homes, and that had got the government worried. There is a massive inventory pile-up as well in the real estate sector, so there could be some measures coming in for the real estate sector, and once the sector revives, the government is expecting and hoping that this is going to provide some relief to the consumers as well, to the people who have put in their hard-earned money into buying homes. So there is going to be some relief coming in for home buyers. We're given to understand the government has already pressed companies like NBCC, which are state-run, to get into finishing some of those unfinished flats. So that is something that the government is discussing at the highest level. If a stressed asset fund were to come in, this is going to help in completion of some of those stuck houses. So we are given to understand that discussions are on with respect to the real estate sector at the highest level between Finance Ministry as well as the Prime Minister's office. Needs to be seen how much money can the government really give in to provide relief to consumers. The second bit, of course, on the auto sector. Right now, the big problem that we are seeing in the auto sector is how there is a massive inventory pile-up. People are not buying cars because of the regulatory changes from BS4 to BS6 vehicles as well. So if a regulatory clarity were to come in, this could allow some of those people who are not buying cars at this point of time to be able to perhaps if some sort of a leeway comes in, they may go into the market and look at buying a four-wheeler. So some sort of relief measures are likely. As I said, how effective will they be is something that only time can tell.
Right, Ruchi, thank you very much for getting us all of those details. Ruchi Bhatia over there getting us the inside details from the series of meetings that the Finance Ministry has been having on reviving the economy. Let's quickly go back to our panel, and I'll go across to Sunil Alagh here. Sunil Alagh, with as someone who has a background in the corporate sector, you heard what Ruchi had to say. Whatever she said, does this look attractive enough? Do you think that this is enough to get the private sector to actually think of investing now?
No, I don't necessarily agree with what she has just said, because again, you're going back into what I've been fighting all along. You cannot have an economy which is industry led. There are about 12 lakh flats in India unsold. Forget about giving money to people who haven't built flats. Until you get people to buy flats, how are you going to get rid of it? Now you give auto sector some money because they got inventory. That will solve the money for the auto sector, but the growth will come only when people want to buy cars. And I completely disagree with anyone who says that, look, you cannot put money into the hands of the consumer. Look, the whole sentiment is one of ease of doing business, great. But if you do not help people with the risk of doing business, then how is it going to happen? Like, I don't understand this element of just giving a little bit of money to the auto sector and they'll get rid of their inventory. How will they get rid of it? Somebody has to come and pick it up. So are they going to reduce the price of all the cars by 25%, 30%? Look, Mr. Shaktikanta Das has brought down the rate of interest by almost little over 1% in the last 6 months. It was going 0.25, 0.25. What more do you want RBI to do? But when you talk to the banks, they turn around and say, look, we've already lent the money at 8% and 9%. How do I change that? So the lag between some decisions now and the decisions then when working out will take about 6 months. Right now, put money into the hands of the consumer. I mean, look, all these things are necessary. You got to give money to the real estate. They'll start getting.
No,
But
Sunil Alagh, tell us how can you put money?
There are 2 lakh flats lying
Right.
in Bombay.
Sunil Alagh, if you could explain this to us, how can you put money in the hands of the people?
In the middle income group, 1 second, I'm turning around and saying you got about 200 and look, biscuits and everything else. If you hear what they have to say, if a guy in biscuits, the volume has dropped growth has come down to 5%. When a person is not spending money to buy a 4 rupee packet, what is going to happen? Rural economy, urban economy, everybody reduce the tax for the middle income group. Somebody said in February we brought the tax down, but you took the petrol price up by 1.5 rupees this time. When you take away the money from the middle income group, they're going to stop spending. Look, the whole perception is I will rather keep the money and spend later. How do you change that perception? How do you market to the people that, look, come out and spend? That itself becomes important. Otherwise, all these steps will still keep you going round and round because the demand is not there. The flats will remain unsold. You're helping car companies with their inventories and giving them a little extra money. Banks have got money now. Nobody's investing in India. The Indians are not investing. That is the most important thing. The whole environment has to change. As Shaktikanta Das said in the end, look, the perception is going to become as important as reality. So that's what I keep saying again and again. All these little steps will only help industry. You got to help the consumer. You take America 2007 or something when they had it. Obama gave money to the banks, yes, but the consumer got it as well. They never reduced their expenditure. They never stopped spending. That's why everybody was able to get out. Today you're giving money to everybody else except the customer, then it's a little sad as far as I'm concerned.
Right. What do you have to say, Aman Agarwal?
You see, first of all, it is not a question of a sector-specific problem. It is actually happening across the board. And to a great extent, I would say, like quoting 2 or 3 regulators in specific, like the NGT has actually completely disturbed the automobile sector. The diesel, any car which you make, which is going to have a lifespan of about 10 years, who is going to be ending up buying? That's why a large number of companies have stopped producing diesel engines in this country. Even a country like United States doesn't have such draconian laws of disowning a car in about 10 to 15 years. You need to check the car if it is polluting or not. And those vehicles which are actually polluting, like the trucks and the tractors and all, are not stopped at all. Now, so you're not actually helping pollution. Instead, you should have asked the industry to come out with new ingenuitive structures which could be added on to the engines to reduce the pollution instead of restricting such a thing. You see, as a professor, I know most professors in this country end up buying a car at the age of 50, 55. Savings from their savings at large, and it is for lifetime asset. Now, given the fact that you're looking at him when he's retiring and he has no income except for pension, you are wanting him to buy a new car. I think that is something which is crippling the economy, and that's why we see large number of jobs loss happening. That is not going to happen by reducing interest rates. That's not going to happen by giving the slags which are there, you need to boost up the industry. If you look at the banking itself, now the PC, as I told you, had put the whole banking into a standstill. Motivate the banks now to set up branches instead of just going automated and making AI and structures. You should open up banks to go about opening up branches, employing people, educating them in structures. Third component which is critical, if I say education, which is a very important sector, is one regulator has shut down reduced about 10 lakh seats from 40 lakhs to 30 lakhs in the last 10 years on one pretext or the other in the name of maintaining quality. Today we see even government schools and colleges, they are saying, the government and the various government agencies who are sponsoring some of these schools and educational institutions are saying, we don't have money to actually go about sponsoring them and giving them revenue structure. What are we doing? If people are not going to be educated, how are they going to go forward and go about creating and making more productivity there? Each of these institutions which are getting shut down means a lakhs and lakhs of people getting out of job, lot of ancillary industries going out of job. That's where I say a regulator has go about hand holding, help, support. You can't be a regulator like the way it used to be in 50s, 60s and 70s, and especially not in times when the whole world is seeing recessionary trends. What can our reserves and other things do if the regulators act against what the government is wanting to do? One side they say we want education, we want people to prosper, we want people to go about spending, but on the other side the regulators cripple them, the tax authorities squeeze them. How are they going to function in tandem? You see, you need to give that leeway. Like when 15th August takes place, we fly a kite. A kite cannot be flown by only stretching the string. You have to loosen the string at times, give it relaxation.
Right.
NPA was critical,
let me
but
bring in,
just clinging on to NPAs and squeezing the whole industry is not important.
So essentially, both of you are largely in favor of putting some money in the hands of the consumers and also enabling industry. Mohan Guruswamy, you have sent us recommendations which would look to reward taxpayers. Would you care to elaborate on them?
Same thing.
I have suggested 5 things. One is I've suggested depreciation for the individual car owner, a token rate maybe 4%, for cars up to 12 lakhs. That is, first 12 lakhs you allow them to take a depreciation. Similar depreciation for private house owners or new houses, post 2019 registrations, first time owners, 1 house, first time owners for cars, 1 car. So, things like that to get it moving, to create an incentive to say, okay, let's go and get some benefit because the government is also chipping in. Because what the government gives away in terms of depreciation, it gets back by terms of, additional indirect taxes, steel, cement, copper, whatever is consumed, you get additional income taxes. 40% of a car is taxed, so, you get, if you give away 4%, you will get 4 lakhs of rupees through the back door. So these are things the government needs to do, plan it out carefully and do it. You also need to spend money. You need to get a huge block of money and tell people that this money is going to be available from this year onwards. Now, point is, you keep talking about, your correspondent kept talking about the government meeting now. These trends have been visible since December 2018. Everything has been coming down. FMCG has been dropping, cars have been dropping, bikes have been dropping, tractors have been dropping. All indicators is going downwards. Why are they meeting now? Didn't they have a game plan then? Didn't they plan then? No, so you sleep over this crisis, let it boil, let the boil come to peak. Now you burst the boil.
Well, Mohan Guruswamy,
attack now. You don't go on
Mohan
having
Guruswamy,
meetings.
I agree it comes quite late in the day, but let's give credit where it's due. Let's give credit where it's due. We need to accept that the government has at least started work.
No, it's not due. Credit is not due. He must take the blame for it.
Right.
You can't say that he will act after 6 months.
Right.
There's a crisis. They should have acted in January or February. They didn't do a thing. They let the budget pass. And now they're waking up. So let them act fast now. Already 8 weeks have been going since this crisis has been flagged. And they're still meeting.
Anila Singh, would you want to come in over there?
It's time to end meetings and time to act.
Put
proposals on the ground.
Anila Singh, let me bring in the BJP spokesperson. Would you like to come in over there? Mohan Guruswamy clearly saying that you seem to have missed the bus and you need to act fast now.
No, we have not missed the bus, first of all. And with all due respect to Mr. M. Guruswamy, I just want to say here, sir, when we talk about the economy, though you are a very senior economist, we can't put it in time frame isolation. And I am not chest thumping when I say that when we took over in 2014, the inflation was around 7.5 something. And in today's date, inflation is below 3%. So we are not denying this fact. We are not indifferent to the situation, the economic situation which our country is seeing in today's date, and the government is seriously working on it. And I was listening to Mr. Alagh as well, like he was saying that a step should be taken, that the consumer should have money in their hands so that they can spend, and it should not be the industry-oriented help from the government side. But at the same time, we need to understand that yes, there are certain core areas where immediate attention of the government is required, say like we are discussing about the automobile or real estate business or the exports, whatever. So definitely the government is going to take care, whether it is about the NBFCs, so where the money has to be injected, whether it is how much money has to be given to the industrial sector or to the or to make consumer more spending happy. So there the steps are going to be taken by the government, as your correspondent also told. As an official spokesperson of the party, I cannot right now claim and declare that these are the steps which government is going to take to improve the or to give the helping hand to improve the economy of our country. But definitely government is on it. So we need to understand this thing also, that if you talk about the consumers, in which area consumers are not spending, or is it automobile or white goods? So we need to understand, is it the bank related or is it the salary related?
Anila Singh, I'll tell you where consumers are not spending. Anila Singh, I'll tell you where consumers are not spending. They're not buying 5 rupee biscuit packets. That is where consumers are not spending. That is how dire the situation is. I saw Aman Agarwal wanted to come and
let him... You're talking about the FMCG?
Exactly. They are not buying innerwear. They are not buying biscuit packets.
So, Kavita, this is what... Kavita, this is what I am saying, that one of your panelists was saying that money should not be there to help the industrialists. Like if redundancy is there, if people are losing their job, so the government has to see this thing also, that like people, they should have their job so that they can spend as well. So everything is correlated. We can't see a situation in isolation.
Right. Anila Singh, all my panelists seem to disagree with you. I'll go to them I'll go round to them one more time. And gentlemen, while I also come to you, I want you to also think of one other big problem that we are probably not giving enough credence to. And the fact is that at least 15 of our states are either flooded or have just come out, and they have faced massive destruction, massive devastation because of the floods. Now, some of these states also had suffered from drought, which means the rural economy that we speak of, the urban economy that we speak of, has also taken another big hit, even as the government accepts that there is a slowdown. How is that also going to impact the revival that we are trying to script? Aman Agarwal.
I'm happy you raised this, because this is one of the points which I was going to talk about, is the fact that just to brush away the fact that economically they're not doing anything, it's wrong, because large number of strong political path-breaking decisions have taken place in the last couple of months, which included Triple Talaq, Kashmir and others, which will actually boost up in investment. Now, this is the flood issue which you have raised again. You see, we have seen economically, which is not good, but it is there as a fact that wars and such devastations actually end up governments going about spending on reconstruction and reorientation, and that actually goes about building up these economic frameworks. As I said, it is not something which is desirable, but this is the way it happens. So we have seen various economies grow at the cost of wars, floods, droughts, tsunamis, and so on and so forth. So we would see that money now being pumped in, and that will create, because that will give other areas, other industries which are not in those zones to come forth and work and create those institutions. And that will be both publicly funded and privately funded, which will go in jointly. Now, this is where we will see growth in investment. But the important component, as I pointed out earlier, also is that the government needs to bring in the youth and bring in jobs and rozgar, as a matter of fact, whether it is through the PPP mode, whether it's through other, but not distribute largesse as we saw in some previous governments which have been done by just giving away money under different schemes, which is actually non-productive in nature. So you are supposed to have an investment oriented growth, and I hope this government will keep that in mind. Just giving a break to an industry is not important. What is important, in my opinion, is to create that appropriate framework for them to go about selling. If you want to do that, like the liquidity is a big crunch, the banks are not able to give away liquidity, so at least relax the norms when it comes to NPAs for a short period of time. Don't make it so rigid and redundant that the companies and organizations, whether MSMEs or large, cannot surface up because they have liquidity crunch which they are not able to get from the markets, because of whether the consumer goods are not selling or because banks are not giving or any other means. So at least the Reserve Bank of India and others can actually take a stand that let us give them that leeway, let us postpone the payments which are supposed to take place and not them declare them as NPAs, not declare them as bankrupt or other problems. Give them that the relaxation for at least a small period. Now that is something which will actually ease them off and let them keep growing and wanting to grow forward, apart from some of the other measures which have been already indicated. An important component, in my opinion, is the government has to work with people. It is government and people, and not government versus people or government versus companies. And that scenario, in my opinion, with Shaktikant Das's speech today, has come out very strongly that we have to change that perception. We have to bring in that positivity into our structure. And just looking at negativity, talking of negativity, it's important to highlight the critical issues, but not make them the run of the mill.
Right. Sunil Alagh, I saw that you wanted to come in.
No, I just want to tell Anila saying that, look, it's not a question of saying that it should only be consumption driven or only industry driven. Mohan Guruswamy has come up and said, incentivize. I don't care how you put money into the hands of the consumer, one way or the other. So unless you do that, nothing is going to happen. And as far as Shaktikanta Das is concerned, he's actually reduced 1% in 6 months. Nobody's ever done that before. So if you look, it's like creating a sea link in Bombay, and the moment you get off the sea link, you're again in a jam in Haji Ali. So that's the whole situation, that unless you take a comprehensive view, you got the consumers to spend, then you put money in the hands of the industry, then everything moves. But just putting money in the hands of the industry without giving it to the consumer, it will never function. That's all the point that I was trying to make, Anila. And I'm not blaming the BJP or the Congress or anybody. I don't want to make a political statement on this. It's understanding it, and I think Shaktikanta Das has understood it. The government is beginning to understand it, and we all hope for the best.
Certainly, we do hope for the best. Any last words, Mohan Guruswamy?
Well, I hope for the best. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Touch wood. Let them do something. Let me see what happens.
Well, we certainly hope for the best, and we are sure that the government has no dearth of people to advise on its policy and what it should be doing to revive the economy. A lot of those would be very similar to the solutions put forward by our panel as well, all of them experts in their own right. But the key takeaway, as far as I'm concerned, is what our panelists very, very eloquently put forth. One, the government needs to start spending. Two, it needs to ensure that there is more money in people's hands. How can it do that? There are currently about 6.83 lakh vacancies in the public sector. The government has started work to fill these vacancies. I believe around 4 lakh vacancies are to be filled by March 2020. Now, considering the fact that the economy is in the state it is, the government would do well to expedite that filling of vacancies and do it as soon as possible so more people can get to jobs. If 4 lakh more people start getting a job, start getting a salary, that means 4 lakh more households will probably start spending that money, all of which will come into the same economy that we are talking about. That will really, really help as far as confidence is concerned. And once the public sector, once people start spending, once the government starts spending, the private sector will also follow suit. Like our panelists put it, let's hope for the best. But stay with us. Up next is another very big issue that we should be worried about. We spoke about it a bit in the last discussion. 15 states are flooded across India. Nearly 500 people have lost their lives due to floods and rain-related incidents. First, Assam, Bihar, Odisha, Sikkim, Tripura and Meghalaya reported unprecedented floods that resulted in loss of life and property. Then, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka and Kerala were left inundated. Several districts crumbled to the floods. Now, 4 states in the north of India are fighting flood fury. Over 22 people were killed and 9 others were injured in rain-related incidents in Himachal Pradesh as on today. 3 people killed in Punjab. Parts of Haryana flooded. In Delhi, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has held a meeting with government officials today as the Yamuna River's water level nears the danger mark. A cloudburst has killed 17 people in the Uttarkashi district of Uttarakhand. We can keep naming states and districts to you. With flooding across 15 states this monsoon, it is very, very clear that something is seriously wrong. That India is probably unprepared for climate change and the wrath of nature. Tonight I ask, as governments blame unprecedented rains for the flooding, is this a result of nature's fury or is it a man-made disaster? Joining us is Himanshu Thakkar, Coordinator for the South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People, GP Sharma, President, Meteorology and Climate Change at Skymet Weather Services, and Anila Singh will also be joining us in a bit. I'll begin, of course, by going to GP Sharma. Now, GP Sharma, we've been told by government after successive government that these rains were unprecedented. And it could well be true. None of us have ever seen rains like this before, at least not in my lifetime. But as someone who studies weather, do you see these rains as unprecedented? Is this something that we should be wary of? Will we see more of such events in the future?
Yes, there is no denial. These rains were extremely heavy. Okay, and one after the other, the rains were shifting from one pocket to the next pocket, causing a deluge, huge one from eastern parts, then to the central parts, and then right traveling up to Gujarat, along the west coast. Yes. See, in the month of August itself, in these whatever 18, 19 days we have, there is a excess of rainfall, 35% excess in the month of August. July and August, in any case, they are the rainiest month of the monsoon. And then, yes, it has been extremely heavy rainfall. And particularly few pockets, but like last 48 hours or so, over the weekend, we saw extremely heavy rains lashing Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and then even plains of Punjab and Haryana. So this is definitely causing a concern, and then such huge rainfall in a short span of time, it does become unmanageable on few occasions. But then one should be prepared. These are the vagaries of the monsoon. It's not happening for the first time, by the way. It has happened earlier also. We have seen extremely heavy rainfall incidents in the past also, and they will happen even in the future also.
No,
One
but
need
GP
to cater
Sharma,
for all
GP
these things, I will
Sharma,
say.
are these merely GP Sharma, are these merely vagaries of monsoon, or is this what we should understand as climate change?
See, that's what the climate change also, there is no denial. There is a climate change taking place, and particularly in the recent past, 8 of the warmest year or hottest year out of last 10 years itself. So there is an increase in the temperature. Increase in the temperature, what it brings is a lot of convection. There is a increased amount of water vapors because of evaporation. So all this will lead to such type of weather, intense weather activity, extremely heavy rainfall in a short span of time, huge amount of rains. Number of rainy days possibly may be less, but the rainfall experienced during this period, during few days itself, will be phenomenal. That's what the climate change does. What it does is intense and the high impact weather events, the frequency increases, and that's what it has done. Yes, please.
Right, so extreme weather conditions and extreme rain events, we'll see intense rain events and spread over a few days. But let me go across to our other guest, Himanshu Thakkar. Himanshu Thakkar, are we prepared? We have a huge network of rivers in this country. We are blessed with it. But are we mismanaging these rivers, or are we prepared for the vagaries of climate change?
See, I think we should take climate change as given, and what our friend from Skymet has said, it's true that the kind of rainfall pattern that we were used to is no longer going to happen. The rainfall pattern is changing. We have to take it as given, and we can choose to push all our mismanagement under the carpet of climate change and go ahead, but that will not help. The point is that we are mismanaging our water resources. The first point in that is that we need to understand to use the rain. We have still not understood, how to use the rain. 75% of the water that India uses comes from rain in the southwest monsoon alone. Now that rain, that's one problem, major problem. And rain basically is a decentralized source. So we need to learn to harvest rain where it falls, put it into the most benign of the resource, storage option we have, both in terms of the groundwater storage and the soil moisture, and in terms of the local water systems and wetlands. Because we are destroying all that, the forests, the wetlands, the local water system, the soil's capacity to hold moisture, and groundwater recharging systems, because of that, the rain that is falling quickly ends up in the rivers and reservoirs. The second thing is that the way we are managing our dams and reservoirs, which is an invitation to disaster and trouble, because we are not following basic rules and rule curve for every dam. We are filling up the dam as soon as there is water, and the dam operators all love TINA factor. TINA is there is no alternative. So they fill up the dam and then say, now there is TINA, we don't have any alternative. We had no other option but to release the water. The point is that the dam is not supposed to be full before the end of the monsoon. If you do that, then you are inviting trouble. That's exactly what happened, for example, in the Krishna Basin in Maharashtra and in Karnataka. It happened the same thing in Kerala in last year. It happened the same thing in so many instances I can narrate you.
So Himanshu Thakkar, explain this.
I can narrate you.
Sorry, explain this to me.
But we are not, just one sentence.
Right.
We are not learning anything from that.
Right. What I wanted to ask you is this. Like Mr. Sharma just pointed out to us.
One of the things we need to do is that.
Sorry. What I wanted to ask you, Himanshu Thakkar.
What we need to do this year is that set up an independent inquiry. Just one sentence.
Okay,
we need to set up an independent inquiry this year into the way the dams were operated in Maharashtra and Karnataka, and apportion responsibility of the people who are responsible for mismanaging those dams and which created increased flood disaster, which will include the individual dam operators, the Water Resource Department officials, and also Central Water Commission official, because the Central Water Commission is the chief body which is involved in flood forecasting and flood management policy making and dam operation monitoring and so on. So it's also equally responsible. For all these agencies, we need independent inquiry to apportion responsibility.
Right. Himanshu Thakkar, my question to you was essentially this. Now we know that states tend to try and store as much water as possible because they fear that in the summer months they will fall short of water. In hindsight, having seen the kind of rains we got and going by what Mr. Sharma is telling us that we will see more of such events in future, should we then start releasing water right in the beginning of the monsoon itself instead of waiting till the 15th August like most of the state governments generally do?
See, no. See, the thing is that most of the state government try to fill up the dam and release water after the dam is filled up. No, that's invitation to trouble. The rule curve for the dam says that the dam should be filled close to the end of the monsoon. If you fill up the dam earlier, you know, the Almaty dam, the biggest dam in Krishna Basin in Karnataka, was filled up by 28th of July, 99.5%. All the Koina, Radhanagari, Varna dams in Maharashtra and also Malprabha, Gatprabha and other dams in Karnataka were also filled by 5th of August. And then the flood event started after 5th of August. So first thing is, you are right. The dams need to start releasing water right from the beginning of the monsoon. That's the prudent way of dam management across the basin. That way the water that is there in the basin is available to all the states and all the regions. The second thing is that the rule curve should be in public domain. Rule curve needs to be updated. Rule curve tells you how the dam is supposed to be operated.
Right.
Now that rule needs to be updated, keeping in mind the changing rainfall pattern, keeping in mind the capacity of the reservoir which is reducing, and keeping in mind the capacity of the river in the downstream area. So, you know, if the river downstream has 1 lakh cusecs capacity and if you release 5 lakhs cusecs, you are creating flood.
You are creating
You
flood,
can't
right?
then say
Let me quickly bring in
We
GP
have no other
Sharma.
alternative
Let me
because
quickly
you
bring
didn't
in GP
start.
Sharma. I'm running out of
So
time
it is
here.
not just a hindsight.
Right. Sorry,
Let me
Himanshu
just
Thakkar.
correct one thing.
Himanshu Thakkar, I'm running out of time, I'm afraid. GP Sharma, one last thing, and if you could be as brief as possible, tell me this. Basis the capabilities that we currently have, how much can we predict for? How far can we predict for? Can we predict for a month, for 2 months, for a year?
Accurately.
See, for a month or 2 months, obviously, the longer the ranges of the forecast, obviously you have to compromise with the accuracy. But short-term forecast, like for about 10 days forecast or so, which is very, very crucial for this type of water management, that is definitely possible with a fair amount of accuracy, I will say. 10-15 days in all these incidents which we have mentioned now, whether it is a Karnataka or whether it was Maharashtra or whether it was Kerala, it was forecast well in advance that the heavy rains are going to come, extremely heavy rains are going to come. There is a need to have a coordination and we need to have a dialogue between the various agencies which should be held responsible for this, be it the state government, central government, water commission, the forecasting agency. All these have to put in their heads together and we got to believe in each other. If there is a forecast that heavy rains are going to come in the next about 1 week or so,
Right, Mr.
might
Sharma,
as well,
thank you.
if the reservoirs are already
Mr.
full.
Sharma, Mr. Thakkar, thank you very much. But
So
here's where we
need
are.
to do the needful.
Right, here's where we are as we leave you with footage from Jammu that came in today of the Indian Air Force Jawans evacuating people, as you can see over there, from a flooded river. Here's where we are. Here's where we stand. We have the capability to predict weather and adverse weather conditions for 10 to 15 days. We also have the necessary expertise to manage our dams. What we need to do is stop being short-sighted. What we need to do is accept that there is climate change, that this is how climate change is going to impact us, and come up with better solutions for water management. We need to work with other predictions, with long-range predictions, and we need to sit together as a country. All the states need to sit together and come up with solutions. That's the only way that we can fight the devastation that flood can cause. Because one thing is very, very clear. The floods that we saw this year, they're not just climate change. Those floods were man-made. Thank you for watching.